you could even make that argument.
Just a
I
chance.
Think, like, at least this week's affix absolutely improves the gameplay of the dungeon.
This
But we
week's
could use
affix
some more
was
stuff.
bad before because there were a lot of encounters that
Yeah.
were just like completely janky as hell. Like Siege of
Man,
Borel's
this would
last
be
boss,
good.
right? Like the balls would just go into the boss and you couldn't do anything about it. So it was just,
Yeah.
you were
That's
just fucked.
hilarious.
Like it was just like a lose-lose situation, right? There's no.
I do
possible
need a
winning.
waste.
But
This would be
they've
good.
addressed a lot of these.
I think the Void
Bad
Emissaries as
overlaps, or
well.
what do you want to
That
call it?
affix came out and was pretty bad, but they've like made it a lot better. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I
It
think
was
they're
kind of
all in a good
expected.
spot now. Like, it's
Yeah.
good. They're definitely better than nothing.
The bigger problem right now that's happening is the gatekeeping is probably at an all-time high. I wonder what exactly is causing it. I don't know if it's because the dungeons are just so hard, or if it's because of the 12 jump, the 10 jump, or maybe it's just because of like how solidified the meta is. Like I can't pinpoint the exact issue, but this is the most gatekeeping has been in M Plus in like forever.
Well, that's really interesting because I feel like probably maybe not compared to season 1 Dragonflight, but I feel like compared to season 2, 3, 4 of Dragonflight, I feel like the balance of what classes can do damage is actually a lot better than it has been. I don't know about healers, but
before you go to that part, I would say like it's specifically the healers that are in a really bad spot. Like when you don't have a resto shaman, these dungeons are cursed. And but I say cursed because like there's literally curses in these dungeons that you can't do anything about. I mean, you've done some of them, right? Like Grimbatol, there's the curse from the Warlocks that just puts like a fucking 8 million absorb on a player. And what do you do if you don't have a decurse? Like literally, you just heal through 8 million absorb while there's like a bunch of other damage going down. And there's like just all these crazy.
You can just feign death.
Cleansing totem is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Even with the nerf, I know they just nerfed it, but like you can still recall it, and it's still on a 2-minute use does something that no other button can do, right? Like, so it's still really powerful.
Yeah, like there's right now the healer representation is like almost all resto shamans, and when you're listing your keys too, you just see all resto shamans, and even tanks are in a kind of weird spot, which is surprising because like normally as a tank you just get into groups easily. In fact, I had one guy who just like entered my chat today, first time chatting message, never followed the channel before. He just rips like a, hey dorky, F you, you're the guy who makes it really hard for me to get invited to groups as a blood DK because you said it's bad, you bastard, blah blah blah. Like,
that's what you did. You did that.
I mean, it ain't me, man. You gotta blame Mr. Maximum here with his tier list.
Whoa.
That,
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa.
has like hundreds of thousands of views and it got 1,000 subscribers on Twitch.
Run out.
That's what we should be attacking.
Keep moving.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just feel like there's no way to address like WoW. We've seen WoW being good and bad over the course of the last 8 years. There is no way to solve this gatekeeping thing besides like, oh, we'll just tune the game better. Well, hey, they are constantly trying to do that all year round. Every expansion.
Yeah, just do a better
Sometimes
job
good and
designing the
sometimes
game,
bad. That's
forehead.
what you know is going to happen, right? And even in the cases where it's good, people still are very selective over very small margins, and they have been for a really long time, right? Like, the issue with Mythic Plus is queue times. Queue times being how long it takes you on average to get into the group. It also makes you feel like you have to play classes where your queue time is shorter, classes that are more likely to get invited. I mean, I feel like there's no real solution to Mythic Plus will never meaningfully be any different than it is now when in regards to gatekeeping or getting in groups until they come up with some way for every single spec to have the same likelihood to get invited to a group, and that's just some kind of cooked up solo queue system, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that would
I
have to
think
be a
it's
solo
little more
queue cook.
extreme this time though because of the, well, I want to say required utility because, I mean, they've had a blue post talking about this before, right? I'm pretty sure we've gone over this before where we had a blue post talking about healer philosophy and how spells shouldn't be mandatory, they should be a luxury to have. You guys remember this or?
Yeah.
I do remember it. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I think there's two variables that determine how like gatekeeping a season is. One is like how close are the, in this case, let's talk about healers. How close are the healers in terms of being able to do the same key level, right? And like making it an easy run. And then the other is how high is the highest level you have to go to do rewards relative to where things get really hard. And I think the problem this season is that the level you have to go to get rewards, like the max rewards comes from plus 10s, and plus 10s are really hard relative to previous seasons' maximum reward level. Like, so if you are going into a +10 with a good Holy Paladin, but not like the world's best Holy Paladin, you're going to feel them being like substantially worse than a good Resto Shaman. And in like say Dragonflight Season 1, where you just needed to do, I think it was 15s for maximum rewards, or 20s or something, 15s I think maybe for maximum reward, you would go in there and like the highest keys that season were 24s or whatever, and 26s, and you could go into the 15s and do the max reward keys with like anything, right? A well-played version of whatever would be fine. And I think that's actually the biggest
really good
difference this
point.
time, because
Very well
I don't actually
articulated by
think that
Dradnos.
the healers
He's
are
so
like
smart.
that unbalanced at the mid-key level. I think the main difference is just that the reward level is higher than usual.
That,
Yeah,
and
I mean-
also, like, you have to wonder, like, why exactly do people want to invite these specs, right? It's because they want maximum success chance.
Right.
It's not because...
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because the
it's
chance
not-
of
it's not
failure is
personal.
real.
People,
at
the
high
people who
keys,
are
yeah.
gatekeeping are not being assholes. They are doing something that is like objectively increasing their chance of success and not wasting their time. They're not doing something that doesn't make sense. Like sometimes it's extreme. Like sitting there and waiting 30 minutes for like your 5th spot being your last DPS, and they're like, instead of taking like 5 things with the exact same score that are within like 1% of the power of one thing, and like that happens, but like most of it is completely reasonable from the key holder's perspective. So that will probably never change. That's just like, this is just one of the only games where you have a group finder system that isn't a huge
Right.
thing at all, and you can choose your party members. And like, just imagine how that would work in like League, right? Like think about how long a top laner would wait for the exact jungler they want or something like that. Like, it's just it's a completely cursed system, right? Like there's a reason that it ends up that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say...
Yeah.
if you are stuck in this situation, probably just like, you know, make your own key, list your own key, maybe try to like find your own group of friends to play with. You don't have to go through this whole process. I swear M+ is so much more fun when you're playing in a group.
Yeah, try and escape the pug ecosystem, but obviously
Well,
that's like
also-
easier.
I
said than
disagree.
done.
I
Isn't the
love
problem
pugs.
also
I'm a
dungeon
sick
design? 'Cause,
freak.
like, I'm thinking about Resto Shaman. Doesn't Resto Shaman have literally everything they had last year except for a raid
Yes,
buff?
it's 100%.
And like, people didn't always only want Resto Shamans in the past, right? Like, they had almost
Yeah.
everything they have now. It's just that they added things to where all that utility became necessary, and you felt every bit of it. And then it's like, okay, well, you have to have this thing, right?
It's a similar situation to Season 2 of Dragonflight. Remember with Shadow Priest? Remember before they nerfed
Oh,
Mass
like Mass
Dispel
Dispel.
and, yeah, Mind Sweep? It's because that season specifically, there were a ton of magic dispels and a ton of places where you can Mind Sweep skip, right? Like the dragons and Halls of Infusion. And this time we're feeling that, like, I don't know what it is, but they decided to just like add a bunch of curses, like the ones in Stone Vault that do like 80% of your HP per tick, or you have like an infinite healing absorb, or you have a bunch of poisons that just chunk you for half your HP per tick. I don't understand why there's all these outliers.
Even back then, you remember the complaint, especially from Shadow Priest, was like, they're nerfing us because of the design of this season's dungeons. Like, it doesn't even feel like what we have is overtuned. It seems like what we have is overtuned with the like problem they've given us to solve. Like, they've made us the perfect solution to a problem they've created, like, for us to solve in the dungeons. And now we're losing all these things, but like, last season we had all these things and we weren't even good, right? So like, clearly the issue is what you're making and not, which is just probably a broader discussion maybe for another episode, which is just like, is the current direction they're going in Mythic Plus a good thing? They made so many major steps going into this season that you couldn't even talk about all at once, right? There's like, the high keys have their own thing and there's no affixes. Is it even good that high keys don't have this Kiss Curse thing? Like, I don't know. I could imagine doing a 12 or a 13 right now and having a better experience in that key, knowing that I had like a positive affix in it. Just from a gameplay perspective, I know like the ranking thing, like, oh, we can't do keys this week because this positive affix isn't as good as this one. I understand that issue, but like that, and then like the death timer, the increased emphasis on kicks versus stops, which like, you know why they tried that, but like, because everyone's complaining about stops being so important. It's like, but is that the actual solution? I think there's like so many things to talk about, but I don't know. I had a ton of fun playing the dungeons, and I don't know if this is a good dungeon season. Seems like every dungeon season ever, they've never made a dungeon season where like every dungeon owns. There's always like a stinker or a few stinkers, a few great ones, and a lot in the middle. That's kind of what you grow to expect, and it seems like it's just more of the same, right? I don't think it's necessarily a bad. Do you think it's like a bad set of keys?
100%. I think it is.
Oh, you think it's bad?
Arguably the worst dungeon pool, but I will
Oh,
say,
really?
I said this last episode too. DPSing has been a ton of fun, partially because I'm playing Frosty K. Frosty K just like fucking owns, and
I love
it
Frosty
feels like you can play the dungeon too, because like So I've been playing dungeons today. We also started our MDI thing. Maybe talk about it later, but
Which, okay, before you go any further.
no. We talk about it later.
Okay, okay, you can finish. You can finish, but you know what I'm gonna fucking say.
I know what you're gonna say, but what was it? Oh
Come
yeah,
on.
I was gonna say. I'm cross-fitting,
Yeah,
so I was
yeah,
playing
yeah,
some
go
cross-fitting
on.
keys today, and my team is just falling over left and right. We're just like dying to like everything,
alive.
and I'm having a time of my life, man. I'm just chilling there, blasting big damage. Standing mechanic, oh, doesn't matter, man. Just hit a death strike. I've got AMS. I don't even get one shot. It's fucking amazing. It's great, and I feel like this is just how the game should be, man. Like it's so much more fun when you can play your character. In fact, that's one of my biggest gripes with tank and healing. It feels like tank and healing just fucking stinks this expansion. Like maybe people feel differently about it, but I knew this was gonna happen. We
Well, they
talked
made
about this on
active
beta.
changes to make this happen, right?
make
Like
it
they
sticky, right? Yeah.
intentionally did this, yeah.
Yeah, can we even talk about like what the tank changes did, and did they even address the problems? We were talking about how like, oh, let's make damage less spiky.
I
Let's,
missed my Shadow
make it
Priest.
that
This guy's
healing
so
tanks
fun.
matter more, but it feels like none of this shit even
Immaculate
mattered,
class
like,
fantasy.
happened. It was just now tanks are dying more often. They're getting shit on. Now healers have to go through a whole lot more hurdles. And I just wish they made tanking and healing more enjoyable and more compelling to play, because nobody wants to play tank and healing.
I do think that whole topic is probably good for an entire podcast episode with a guest as well, probably a healer guest.
Goddamn healers.
I just think it's
Amen.
so involved. It's so involved, and there's so many angles. But let's just Dranos and I think
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
bring it
yeah,
back
yeah.
here to.
Okay.
So literally last week on the podcast, I'm like, dude, isn't it funny how MDI and TGP people are always like, man,
dude.
the practice sucks. I'm never doing this again, bro. I hate this. I'm never doing it. And then you even were like, yeah, I'm not doing it this time because, oh, it sucks so bad. I think it was like 2 days after we released our podcast, you were like, all right, stream team going up there. We got Now and all these other people, and you're just doing the MDI again.
Look,
Right?
I didn't know I was playing too. I found out like 2 days ago that I was playing.
What do you mean? You decide whether you want to do these things, right?
Yeah.
Or did you
Yeah,
get an
but- Yeah.
opportunity you couldn't pass up?
Well, I mean, I was basically like, Drogo decided to just like hit up people, and he was like, "Oh, I want to just do like a for fun dream team," and then like he hit up like a bunch of like, it was, like Now said he was okay with it, and Yumi TV said he was down for it, and I'm like, sure, why not? It sounds like it'd be a nice show time. But it's actually been pretty enjoyable so far. Partially because I'm playing DPS too. This is the first time I'm playing DPS and MDI, and it's a fucking blast, man. Like
Yeah,
we're
DPS
just kind
is
of
really
vibing.
fun.
Yeah, we're streaming. There's no stress. We're not like thinking about having to put in 12 hours every single day. We're just,
I
like,
actually
playing what we play.
am super interested in your opinion of that by the end of this season, because I've done DPS and MDI and tank and MDI, and I am of the opinion that like I think tank is the most rewarding because like you have so much control, and also it's like one of those things where you're actually pushing what tanking can be to the limit.
this
like,
fight
you
is
are
like
doing what is
nothing on
potentially
LFR,
possible
holy shit.
for a tank. And like DPS,
This
when you
isn't even
pull it,
a
it's really
boss on
fun 'cause it's like it's
LFR.
kind of like you're doing a boss pull over and over again, and until you like perfect everything you're doing. But there's so many instances. It's like a 30-minute or I guess in the MDI, it's like a 10 to 15-minute boss pull. But there's like so many impactful min-maxable things that like you get really addicted to doing it as well as possible, and that is so fun. But I feel like as a tank, you're like, it's the most fun tanking can be because you are doing. You are like, I guess tanking is at its most fun when you can do a lot of damage, but like you are able to survive something that seems like you probably shouldn't be able to survive it. And that like MDI is like, you kind of base your pulls on exactly how much your group can survive for sure, but like sometimes that's gated by tanking. And,
Wow,
like, I
kind of
think that's,
crazy how the
like, super,
Void
super
Weaver
fun.
orb
After doing one MDI
follows
DPS thing,
around the
I wanna come
target.
back to you
That's
and
kind of
see, like, what you
crazy.
think about it.
Yeah, I mean, so
How
far
how
for
the Void
me
Weaver
personally,
orb follows
what
the
I really
target
enjoyed
around.
about DPSing MDI is I feel like I can
I can't even believe that
do
happens,
more
man. That's
outside
crazy.
of my role. You know what I mean? Like I can like shot call more stuff. I can talk about more stuff. I can coordinate more with my group, and I can't really do that as much when I'm playing a tank. Like,
Yeah.
when I'm playing a tank, I'm just like a lot more focused on doing my job rather than like
Yeah, your job's
the external
objectively
jobs.
harder, and so you're focusing on more things. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I just like feel more impactful as like a player rather than a tank or like a DPS.
All right.
Drat,
well,
you have anything you want to? Did he give us a Patreon question for this, or was our
So-
game show the Patreon content?
Yeah, no Patreon content this week, except what we're going to do now is we're going to go and create the tier list. Me and Dorky are going to create the
my
tier list
God.
that Max is going to tweet. By the time you've seen this, you'll have already seen this tweet from Max.
Wait, I have to tweet this later today.
I think so. I think that's the idea, because
So do I
otherwise...
have to leave while you guys make this, and then
No,
just
you can
give it
be
to me?
here. You can be here while we make your tier list. I think that's what we're gonna do. Though is if you want to watch us do that, that's gonna be Patreon exclusive content that'll be going up as well.
That's good
so
content.
Sub to the Patreon, and you could watch us do that. Otherwise, just know that the tier list you saw on Max's Twitter was a prank. It was hopefully a good one. But yeah, that's it for this week's Potty C. Thanks for the 1 year. It's been a blast. We'll see you next week. We got a good one, by the way. We hopefully got some bangers.
Oh,
lined up.
next week is a turbo. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure the next few weeks are turbo bangers. Some really, I guess, not to spoil anything, but we got some really cool guests coming on. So
Hell yeah.
should be very fun. It's gonna
All
be
right.
good. Patios.
Patios.
Patios. Potty see you later. Those Potty C boys. I wonder what the tweet Max tweeted out was. Made a tier list on stream of the current state of class design. Had to take down the VOD because of copyright. But look how forward on YouTube soon. I really meant this, by the way, and this was definitely made by me as well. That's great. Yeah. Hey,
The
Saul.
War Within formula is closely following the Dragonflight formula. So what's changed, and has it gotten any better? Hey, it's Sol, and this is Warcraft Weekly. News highlights just like slathered in copium. It's weightless, by the way, and it's colorless, and it's very irrational. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and of course, catch me live where I'm streaming. Next week, patch 11.0.5 and the 20th anniversary patch goes live, and
And
here's
on to
what
the
we can
next.
expect. Lots of downtime. It hasn't been posted yet, but we're likely to see an announcement that North American realms will be down until 3 p.m. Pacific, barring delays, and you probably don't want to time your vacation for it or anything. However, Tuesday morning, there's a Twitch drop promotion for a Scarab Pet, another former collectible from the old trading card game. It's the usual deal. You gotta watch a participating streamer for 4 hours across a 2-week period to score that pet. I'm gonna be streaming from the very start, so you can knock out your watch time quick, even if realms aren't up yet, so be sure to follow me over on Twitch. This coming Monday, I'll have what I hope to be a easy breakdown of what and how to do all
It's
the
nice to see that
anniversary
the
stuff.
tier list
Lots of
definitely
people are
baited a
looking
lot of
at it
people.
like it's
So well
this,
played,
I
well
don't know,
played,
this
Frank.
overwhelming grind fest, and I hope to present it in a more digestible way. Today, though, I want to have a discussion on how Blizzard is doing WoW these days, because we can more or less compare this current formula to Dragonflight and ask ourselves, is this okay? I'm not a game designer, and most of you are glad for it, but if you're interested in what makes games and the internet work, you can get started learning back-end development through the sponsor of today's video, boot.dev. Back-end developers are in constant demand to make sure the internet supports our day-to-day, so our services and games stay up.
Soul
And dude,
picked
it's
up,
good money. The average developer in the U.S. makes over $100,000 a year.
GM's
Boot.dev
sponsor.
teaches you from start to finish in Python and Go programming languages, which are massively in demand. So what is boot.dev? In so few words, it's a teaching tool designed to help you learn how to write code. It presents itself as sort of like a text-based RPG, giving you little quest-like objectives to understand and write code. There's minimal lecturing or blasting through long paragraphs of jargon and simply, hey, this is what the thing does, let's have you demonstrate by writing examples, or even debug and fix code, and you'll be writing a ton of it. Writing code and shipping is really the best way to learn, and it feels like you're accomplishing something. And you earn experience, achievements, there's leaderboards. It's a very gamer-motivated vibe that feels fun. And best of all, it's accessible. It's self-paced, and the teaching builds on previous lessons. Or you can jump to where you want to go, like Git or SQL or whatever these are called. The full version features access to all the lessons, more progress tracking, live support via Discord, a 30-day guarantee, and so much more. But like games, you can do a demo. It's free to try. boot.dev. If you're interested, click the link in the video description and give it a spin for free. And when you're ready, use code SOLSOLBREEZY to get 25% off your first month or your first year if you choose the yearly plan.
Pretty
All
good
right, so
ad
you've
read,
seen
Sol. That's
enough of
pretty
me.
good.
I'm gonna just tuck myself into the background again and embrace the podcast style like I did last week for some easy listening. So let's talk. World of Warcraft these days has this very predictable course laid out for it. I'm mostly pointing this out now that we've had a release date for the patch, and we could say that, 8 weeks after the launch of the expansion, ta-da, here we are, looking at a new patch. The event attached to this patch, it goes on until the first full week of January, so that's the 6th, with the 7th being a very convenient Tuesday. I'm spitballing here, but if we assume a few extra weeks with respect to like the Thanksgiving and Christmas, the holiday breaks, a new patch is probably going to drop January 7th, and it's probably going to be 11.0.7. I think that's been seen in encrypted builds recently. WoW has lots of patterns it's been following these days after its build up over so many years. Because nowadays patches come about 8 weeks apart with exceptions, like I just mentioned. The patch next week, it's going to typically come with another promotional Twitch drop. And at certain times of the year, we get new promotional amounts for people who pay their subscription in bulk.
I'm doing pretty good
Trading
damage,
post,
actually.
That comes in every month.
Being a
The
guy that
time
just walked
lock-in
in here.
and dungeon events, those can be measured on the calendar, and it's all made up to be very neat. And it looks like the WoW team is trying to improve on this a little bit. Because I mentioned in
Nope.
an earlier video from just the other day,
Whoops.
an important but understated change that's coming in this patch is the solification. I think that's a word, whatever. The solification of Shadowlands raids. Now, hopefully it's going to work as I hope, because one fight seems buggy at the moment, but the takeaway I'm getting is this being a very big improvement over Dragonflight in terms of like scheduling. Because remember, it took like until the end of Dragonflight to make the Battle for Azeroth raids, to make those soloable. So this time, I guess the producers for WoW, they managed to slot this sort of functionality in the War Within's first patch, and that's great news.
There are a lot of
course,
mobs
people would want
from
this
Shadowlands
sooner.
I would
That's
want
a
to go
different
back
argument,
to
but
get, so that is
I'm just
good to hear.
acknowledging they're following through with their legacy raid philosophy with a lot better consistency this time. Back to the scheduling. So after next week, it's going to be maybe like 19 or so weeks until like 11.1, until we enter a new season of The World Within. So it's going to be like 19 resets worth of raids, which are getting soft nerfed every other week, sorry. We're going to get 19 key rotations and probably a whole bunch of changes to all the pain points from dungeons and the fixes. That's going to put us in March with a likely 11.1 patch with more story content and more trading posts and all sorts of other scheduled promotions. And if we look even further ahead, we can probably predict the next expansion midnight to release sometime in May of 2026. Probably after that new Avengers movie, I think. Assuming the same schedule still, The Last Titan, the third expansion of the saga, that'll release maybe February of 2029.
I
and
think it's
finally we can
foolish.
start looking forward to
I like Soul, and I don't think he is a fool. But I think it is foolish to believe that we're going to have the same expansion release cycle for the War Within that we did for Dragonflight. I think they're pretty obviously moving to 18-month expansions. I don't think they want to do another Awakened, Fated season. I don't think the community wants that either, for what it's worth. So I think this prediction is wrong.
to the next saga, where we'll go next, and of course, player housing. Just kidding. I feel like it's important to have this sense of predictability, this unconscious expectation. Maybe you can call it faith or whatever, but I also understand that there's like a criticism behind this kind of scheduling too. Like, maybe this is too predictable. It's kind of corporate in its structure, and gamers are going to get bored. I get that, because we're creatures who crave stimulation and that good old dopamine fix. So yeah, I notice a contradiction.
It's working.
It's not really a contradiction. I just can't find the words. But when we dive into the actual day to day or week to week in World of Warcraft, For example, many gamers, they really like deterministic rewards they can plan for. You know, they want to know their efforts will eventually pan out. But you know what? They also can't stand it when they know the game is designed in a way that they're being purposefully paced. You know, I'm talking about like time gating and the season caps, you know, that sort of thing. They don't like being controlled. You know, the game should respect their time, that sort of thing. But gamers also don't like feeling left behind, especially when the people who are ahead, they affect their gameplay. And I'm not saying that these are like the same people. It doesn't have to be this mutually exclusive thing. You know, but it's hard to jump into the game and find a group mid-season when everyone's already
Getting a
here,
vault on my
right?
Shadow
That's why
Priest,
there are
that's crazy,
catch-ups,
man.
and there's season caps, mention it again, and there's skips. You know, so players can play with their friends, because after all, the game should respect their time. Notice I'm saying it twice. So I guess I'm trying to point out the WoW formula has become this nebulous web of double-edged swords that's both loved and reviled. Like the internet of today, it equivocates those feelings, or maybe favors the negativity part of it, because historically that just drives engagement better. The internet runs off of advertisements and yada yada yada. But
Yada,
anyway, I do have a point in all
yada,
my rants.
yada, yada.
I like the formula and the schedule. For me, it works, right? Just for me. During this season, I didn't have to worry about hardcore rep grinding or forcing myself to do keys to gear up for raids thanks to delves. Like, I have more options to choose from. Now, some gamers look at it like more things to pile on, things that they have to do, and, you know, we all have different sorts of goals, but there's one thing about World of Warcraft that I do find to be tired, maybe boring or unfulfilling. And I've talked this thought up before.
This
and I'm
is
gonna
Warbound.
continue, to do it until I get what I want. But when it comes to the World
And
of Warcraft
my
formula,
hand tier set
this
is not
what
on
you
my
see
dish
here on
list.
screen, this here is old. Like what I'm showing you here on screen is my character's transmog, which is collected from tons of different activities. I have a mount that's earned from completing this, you know, pretty difficult solo achievement. There's a title that I don't know what title I'm going to choose. You know, something fitting. There's a pet that I have that I got from donating efforts to support Ukraine. And this is the endpoint here. What you see is the endpoint of the current WoW formula of rewards, and it hasn't had significant changes in years. It's like saying we can only have so many different kinds of clothes or shoes or drapes on the wall. In the end, it's all the same and only looks a little bit different. Of course, I'm not trying to speak for anyone really, but I'd bet the people who are bored of WoW, they might not realize it, but in a way, they might be tired of just working towards the same old stuff, even if the stuff looks way cooler than it did 20 years ago, even though there might be more different ways to go about earning these rewards. Some have said with so many mounts in the game, it feels like the idea of getting a new mount as a reward feels diminished. It's just another drop in the bucket. But I don't think the solve is, oh, well, we need super awesome quality mounts that
We
aren't
need new
sold
giga
in the shop
mounts.
anymore. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to change anything. It's still just going to be another mount. I think we need new things to work for that aren't just, you know, what we wear or right outdoors. And
I wonder how this is
we
going to
got
go
a small taste
in
of that with mount
LFR.
customization. Now, it's still a mount, yeah, but the idea of creating a unique combination that's yours, that hit just a little bit different. And I think that's what helped it take off pretty well during Dragonflight. What got folks really excited in a way I haven't seen in a long time was with the War Within announcement and war bands, and specifically the warband camp screen. Some of the first commenters were saying, and what crossed my mind too was like, dude, I want to change the background. Could we like change it to different locations? Or I want like more characters in there, maybe change their orientations and poses. Like people were juiced. And in my observation, a lot of it's because it's a new thing. It's not new as in like Torghast or Warfront. It's not that kind of new. It's not a revamped upgrade system sort of new, but it's a new thing to work towards. It's a different endpoint in this World of Warcraft formula. I suspect that among the people who want archaeology to come back someday, I have a feeling that some of that sentiment comes from the game acknowledging their findings and showing them in the world, because it's just different from what we normally get. The garrison is a complicated subject, but for the sake of argument, I'm pointing it out as another example of regular activities going towards irregular things that WoW players aren't used to enjoying. Anecdotally, I've swapped out buildings and moved them around and spent all them resources because maybe I didn't like the orientation, or I just wanted the garrison to feel a little bit more lively with the tavern as opposed to something else. I don't remember. Player housing is hard to fully express, and there's all sorts of conversations and arguments for and against it, but I just want to deliver on the idea of, adding to the WoW formula. Again, never mind the details, we'll get lost in that, but focus on this idea of, like, at the end of the day, being able to express our accomplishments in game in like this new and different way. We're still killing dragons and joining battlegrounds and fighting to get into keys and raids, but now there's this new well to fill, of course, if it's something we're interested in doing. That might be the pie-in-the-sky fantasy, but it really might not be long until we can start getting a feeling similar to this with the warband screen customization that's, who knows, it might come in 11.1. It might be kind of funny seeing forum posts and angry comments like, "Grr, cities are going to be empty because people are stuck on the character select screen like it's all, like they're playing a WoW diorama." But what if we had something like a little bit different? Like, what if the
I'd like a WoW
action
diorama. That
NPCs
sounds
in Dornogal
cool.
had this very robust customization system to show off that good old faction pride? Do you think that would take off instead? Or what if someday we could work towards unlocking different animations for ability casts, maybe even running animations or swimming or death animations?
What are you guys doing?
How about different emotes, customized emotes, or voice selections? And really, there's so much more if we look beyond this current canvas. In short, I'm a pretty happy WoW player. Like, I have my gripes here and there, but I'm good. But I've made it my mission to keep people talking about going further with what WoW can offer. Not just what to do, but what to work towards. And now the floor is yours to share your thoughts on how WoW is doing. Like, are you excited for next week's anniversary patch, or what's next for World of Warcraft? That's
Very
going to be the
much
show,
so.
and as always, I got to give thanks to you folks who make the channel happen. From our viewers on Twitch and YouTube Live to our patrons and their generosity, and of course to you who made it to the end. Thank you very, very much for watching or, listening. Please like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage. Catch me live, and I'll see you next week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.
Stay breezy.
Hey, it's Soul with another video. Patch 11.0.5 releases soon, and there's a lot happening, but I wanted to talk separately about transmog farming after the patch in a kind of status update. What has and what hasn't changed to our ability to farm up old content in this upcoming patch. You're going to find the answers here, or at least most of them, and then you can decide what to do. If this video turns out to be helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me live when I'm streaming. There are 3 big changes coming for transmog. One is automatic. Most quests you've completed that gave different kinds of appearances will all be given to the player, and this is retroactive. And hey, that's cool. The second change makes it so the appearances from class-restricted gear can now be learned on any character. That means gear from the following raids, some of which are class-restricted, can now be learned without having to switch to the right armor type or class. Gear from Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, it's up for grabs. Same goes for Nighthold, 2 of Sargeras, and Antorus.
That's pretty
You can
sick.
do what I'm doing and start farming these places now without looting the bosses. This way the loot goes to your mailbox, and then on patch day, you can unlock tons of transmog without filling up your inventories beforehand. The last change, Shadowlands raids got a pass, and in so few words, players can now solo all of the encounters. I'm going to give a list of targeted changes I noticed from testing in just a bit. First, I want to talk briefly on the state of speed sets in The War Within. It's been a little while, and you deserve an update. Having a good speed set on a character who might do all of your farming can be pretty useful, especially now that one character can collect virtually all the appearances. The only limitation is that it's just one character you're using. As for speed, In so few words, the whole speed set meta, it's kind of in shambles with big nerfs to the Azerite gear that made old world farming feel super fast. But a speed set still is useful, so here's what you do. By using specific Azerite gear from Battle for Azeroth, we can get up to 8% speed increases from the head, the shoulder, and the chest slots. It's still a lot more speed than what you can get anywhere else. More details on where to get those for your armor type are down in the video description. Also keep in mind that Azerite gear doesn't work in Shadowlands and later expansion content. The Onyx Amulet still works everywhere, and it's a good and pretty cheap addition to your speed stat. There's a new Bracer enchant that adds 1,000 speed rating to your bracers, which I suggest using, and the old vanilla minor speed increase enchant is still far superior to anything else available. However, you do sacrifice a ton of item level. There are a few small things like a Delve Trinket that adds speed for like 20 seconds, and it's a nice thing to run into, but something like that, it's not really a must-have. Speed tertiaries found on gear give roughly 2% haste per piece before diminishing returns. The rule of thumb, though, remains the same. You want to find speed gear with both speed tertiaries and secondary stats that maximize the use of the Long Strider buff, but don't break the bank while doing this, and again, Long Strider doesn't work everywhere. Between regular drops out in the world and delves and other farmable places, you just want to keep an eye open for what drops and be as conservative
Ooh, a
as you can get
4.
later.
Yeah, I'll
Don't
not
buy
be
into
winning
the idea
that,
of,
thanks.
oh my god, I gotta get best in slot speed gear, because with new seasons come small increases to these speed ratings. So in my opinion, it's not worth the gold or the extra time farming to maintain a speed set more than like once per expansion or every 2 years. Now if you do find pieces, definitely use it or even sell it, because these can be pretty profitable. With Shadowlands raids entering Legacy mode at the start of this expansion, most of the bosses have been soloable. 11.0.5 takes it all the way. For the most part, these raids can be soloed through good old violence. Bring a high DPS character to overcome just about every encounter at every difficulty. Well, let's get specific with some of the changes I found. In Uldir, Mithrax no longer has an invulnerable phase and can be killed pretty much straight away. Unfortunately, the PTR stopped working before I could look more into BFA raids, but for the most part, the fights are very killable at max level. Even Shadowlands raids should be comfortably doable at the 550 or so item level, but of course, more item level and DPS goes a long way. In Castle Nathria, Kael'thas heals himself 1% every second, so basically the fight finishes itself as long as you keep killing ads, and notably the Shade of Kael'thas when it spawns. Zymox's traps no longer actually trap, and his mind control ghost mechanic is gone. That was kind of it for Castle Nathria. The other fights seem mostly unchanged, and they're not very threatening at all. Next, over at Sanctum of Domination, the anima powers before the Terragru are now fixed. The same 4 powers will always appear, and all other powers will no longer spawn. Picking up the anti-fear power is more than enough to complete the fight, and the rest is just icing on the cake. The Eye of the Jailer fights no longer spawns the ads that try to chain pull you off the platform, which makes this a very simple tank and spank. Fate Scribe mechanically has not changed, but after failing to line up the runes, the AoE wipe damage that you'd normally see, it's pretty trivial now. You just continue the fight and you're fine. Kel'Thuzad is unfortunately broken as of current testing, but I'll point out what I saw to give you an idea of what Blizzard's trying to do here. During the encounter, Rufus the puppy spawns, and it kind of sort of tanks the boss. He can't die, but doesn't really deal damage either. It looks like his purpose is to make sure the fight just doesn't break, because when you kill Kel'Thuzad, you're supposed to go down into his phylactery and defeat the NPC inside, and then return to reality and re-defeat the boss. Rufus is there to make sure the fight doesn't reset, basically. Right now, though, the phylactery room is empty. The NPC we need to kill can't be found or targeted, and hopefully this will be fixed by the time the patch goes live. Because of this, I couldn't test Sylvanas, but I suspect she'll be fixed too, in such a way that it's going to be a little bit easier to travel down the second phase, with the chains, and I'm guessing you can no longer be knocked off the platform in the third phase. Now that's just a guess, but it's clear Blizzard wants to make these raids perfectly doable with these fixes. Moving on to Sepulchre, Zymox used to do tremendous damage with his shockwaves, but not anymore. His traps also no longer trap, which makes this a very easy fight. In the Anduin fight, when the Lich King comes out, he now transfers a crazy amount of damage over to Anduin, making this encounter a lot shorter and easier. Lords of Dread retains an ability that can cause a lot of trouble, so I'll tell you how to do the fight. Target Contessa and burn her down first, especially during the swarm phase when you can deal extra damage. This is to avoid the horrify effect she eventually causes that you otherwise can't get out of without a hard immunity. Now once she's gone, Mal'Ganis is trivial because he also no longer heals with his Tank Buster move. Raglan is also now a trivial fight. His cosmic orbs no longer apply a debuff that would otherwise insta-kill you, and even taking Big Bang will simply phase you out and then he just comes back only to die. The Jailer actually retains a few mechanics. He casts Rune of Damnation, which knocks you backwards, and you need to jump into one of these hexes about a half second before it goes off. This will spawn a pillar used to dodge the mind control cast he does immediately after. He'll cast one more mind control during the fight, but after that he can just be DPS down. Just make sure you don't get knocked back to where you don't want to go. The current state of soloing content in Legacy mode is so far looking a lot better than previous expansions. Like we had to wait a really long time for BFA raids to be soloable. It's got me hopeful that when Midnight releases, all Dragonflight raids will be in a soloable state right when Legacy mode becomes a thing. For now, it's a bit more to look forward to in next week's patch. Easier transmog unlocks, more Legacy raids that are soloable, and I hope this turned out to be helpful. If so, please like the video, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.
Run out. Watch
Oh, there's no suck. Oh, there's the suck. What about orbs? There's no orbs? Fascinating.
A video game company that needs no introduction, but I'll give them one anyway, is Capcom. Best known for legendary franchises like Mega Man, Final Fight, and of course Resident Evil, they are perhaps best well known for making the fighting game genre what it is today. Back in the 90s though, there were dozens of button bashers vying for your quarters and attention, and not just dominated by 3 or 4 big ones, making it a rather wild time for the genre. Someone that's trying to harken back to those days a little bit, however, is Rare Breed Makes Games and Axis Games, who have just come out swinging with Blazing Strike, a brand new 2D fighter that's about to KO Steam, PS4, PS5, and the Nintendo Switch. Featuring giant old school sprites, deep yet simple to understand mechanics, and a crazy roster of characters, Blazing Strike has an old school presentation but with modern touches, like rollback power netcode and a lore-rich story mode. During intense bouts against
That seems
either
pretty
the
awesome.
CPU or a friend, use the versatile rush mechanic to open your opponent up, or opt for a more defensive strategy with parries, or to disrupt your opponent's combos. One modern staple that Blazing Strike will not be adopting, however, is paid DLC, as the game will eventually be offering 2 post-launch characters that will be 100% free. If
That's
that
sick as
sounds
hell.
good to you, and I don't know why it wouldn't, rush on over to the links in the description or pinned comment below to square off with Blazing Strike. Thanks again to Rare Breed and Access for sponsoring today's video, and without further ado, let's commence the operation. Hello and welcome to another episode of What Happened, where we are marathoning through the development stories of 4 different horror and horror-adjacent video games. And with that in mind, there are very few titles that fit that
Stay away from
horror-adjacent descriptor better than today's subject. A subject that really encapsulated Capcom's 2010s obsession with pulling their flagship franchise Resident Evil away from its survival horror roots. Of course, I've tackled the 6th mainline entry before, which while commercially successful when it released in 2012, didn't quite hit the critical goals Capcom were expecting. A trend that was foreshadowed earlier that same year with a spin-off that didn't quite spin off. So get your best gas mask, sidearm, and cool call sign as I answer the question, what happened to Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City?
More zombies.
For this episode,
All right,
I went
cool.
straight to the source as I possibly could. A former senior staff member who worked on Operation Raccoon City and who has graciously gave me some of their time to talk about this divisive entry in RE's legacy. But to kick this off right, we're going to need to put ourselves in the futuristic time period known as 2010, where Resident Evil 6 was shaping up to be an expensive, loud, and supremely bloated experience. To sort of capitalize on all that hype but not overshadow it too much, Capcom wanted to put out a smaller scale companion game to release roughly in the same time frame, and we're looking to collaborate with outside Western third parties to do it. My source stated that the relationship between Capcom and Vancouver-based Slant 6 started when an agency just so happened to put them together, and they immediately started the pitching process for said Resident Evil project. In very typical what happened fashion though, this started off as something quite different from what we eventually got, in that Slant 6 were pushing for a full-on remake of Resident Evil 2. Their pitch was to reframe the final hours of Raccoon City through more of a RE4 style lens, over-the-shoulder camera, more emphasis on action, modern graphics, etc. Reportedly, Capcom rebuffed this, as they themselves were considering a remake of RE2 at that time, but it would be quite a while
They
before
did
they
eventually
made
end
good
up
on
making.
that. So instead, they suggested using RE2 merely as the backdrop, but focus even more on all-out action and co-op. And it's here where Slant 6 honed in on a scenario and particular style of gameplay that would get things moving. To an extent, the original concept came from creative director Adam Bullied, supported by the design team and specifically our in-house Resident Evil expert Andrew Lee. We all liked Resident Evil, but for Andrew, it was like scripture. Adam described the concept and influence as similar to Rosencrantz or Guildenstern Are Dead, where two
Ooh.
minor characters from Hamlet have the story play out
Ooh, okay, that's
from
fun.
their point of view. In reality, the pitching process stopped when three-corner combat became a pillar of the project. Humans versus humans with bioweapons and zombies in between. This concept excited everyone. Slant 6 was tasked with providing it through a demo. Success meant we were greenlit. Failure meant I'd be out of a job, along with everyone else. It was
Great.
quite high stakes. This demo went down well in internal reviews, as the warring factions concept, my source confirmed, was something Capcom was all about, as they were specifically looking to attract a more mainstream Call of Duty audience to hopefully hop on the crazy biohazardous world of Resident Evil. So while this wasn't exactly what some on the Slant 6 side originally had wanted to push forward with, when a publisher of a giant legendary billion-dollar franchise is happy with what you are doing, you tend to just sort of go with the flow. Before we push on ahead though, I do think we should rewind back just a little bit more, so bear with me here. As I've covered before, back in the mid-2000s, LucasArts had scrapped Star Wars Battlefront 3 for some reason, which had been under development by Free Radical Entertainment, and was a cancellation that was something of a death blow for the studio. Why is this relevant? Well, after an attempt by Rebellion to salvage that project, LucasArts took the final swipe of its lightsaber and killed it completely. This process then restarted and ended the exact same way a few years later, when the house that George sort of built contracted Slant 6 to make an all-new version of Battlefront 3, and then just canceled it all over again. This is evidenced by the fact that in 2012, images of this version of BF3 were found on the final rework disc, which obviously sparked discussion about another hitherto unknown cancelled Star Wars title. Regardless of the reasoning behind this cancellation, it put Slant 6 in a situation much like the one Free Radical found itself in earlier, When something you're cooking on the back burner gets ruined, it means all the pressure is now placed upon your main dish, and that pressure would certainly rise with the constantly changing scope and ticking countdown timer Slant 6 would have to work against to complete Operation Raccoon City. Of course, it wouldn't be a good old episode of What Happened without some hugely inconvenient technical hurdles, so try to be shocked when I tell you this had some. Slant 6 had made several SOCOM games in the past, and were right in the middle of doing a complete overhaul of the tech they used there to make the engine to power reorg. This meant they had to design and program the demo, get the green light, immediately launch into development of the full-fledged game, all while still trying to finalize the engine that it ran on. A tall order for any studio. In addition to that, much of the pre-design work Slant 6 had done during the demo phase didn't really match up with what Capcom had wanted for the full game in terms of story, which was a whole other issue in and of itself. A lot of snap decisions had to be made, and working with a Japanese company proved tricky, as we found that if someone floated an idea, it could quickly be embraced and become a milestone or feature. For example, someone, not me, decided that the story should be recorded in January, despite the game being greenlit in October. So, in the first quarter, the script recordings began. This was an incredibly short deadline, especially considering that, at the time, we were still struggling to complete our first level. Inafune-san's departure, in my view, significantly impacted the project. He was a supporter of external development and embraced innovation. After a demo of some upcoming gameplay, he once said, "Slant 6 understands Resident Evil." After he left, I felt some aspects of the project became less flexible and a bit more strained. This isn't the first time that the practices Inafune had put into place in previous years, like collaborating with Western developers, then didn't deeply affect several in-development projects when he abruptly left. When that happened, the remaining Capcom executives started to grow wary of collaboration in the wake of such perceived failures as Bionic Commando, Dark Void, and Spyborg, so this left teams, like those working on Lost Planet 3 and Reorg, holding the bag. One such instance where Capcom and Slant 6 differing design philosophies came into play was with the tried and true headshot mechanic. Slant 6 initially approached it from a Western shooter perspective, where headshots would function as expected: aim, fire, and pop. However, Capcom had a different vision, which made it into the game's first playable public appearance, which I believe was at Captivate 2011. The reduced lethality of the headshot led to some negative feedback from critics and outlets, and seemed to persist all the way until it launched the next year, although I believe a post-launch patch did rectify this, but it's hard to confirm that nowadays. Complications due to developing the engine, spending a lot of time going back and forth with Capcom, and the very quick turnaround time, about a year and some change, meant that the reorg team had to dial back a lot of the ambition they had designed. We originally planned to have a cover system where you could leap over obstacles, but that feature was scrapped. The dynamic cover system we had at the prototype stage was pretty cool, as the character would ease in and out of cover, reacting to the environment, like a special forces soldier trying to stay as concealed as possible. A lot of co-op moments, I'd say most, were cut, along with certain story scenarios. For example, the Super Tyrant was meant to have co-op gameplay where he'd be hanging on the elevator, and players would need to target both his hands at the same time to defeat him. We also had ideas for climbing co-op moments like grab my hand mechanics, breaching, and the demo class being able to blow alternative routes through levels with explosives.
That stuff all sounds really
they are
cool.
interestingly in this CG animated promo. However, they're not in the game for tech reasons. And oh, there is a reason City Hall was so big, it was meant to have a boss inside. Originally, Wesker was going to be featured in the game with a super Wesker moment involving an injection, but that got cut as well.
Damn. This game that could have been sounds sick. I'm going to pause this here for a moment. 'Cause it's been about 2.5 hours. But we are at last ready to dive into Heroic and get that quest done. got that shit unlocked. And so I want to take a quick kitty break. So I can say hi to my babies. My sweet babies. They've learned they can just jump into my lap now. Oh, you don't want to be held like a baby anymore? Yeah, each of you take a side. As long as I sit like this, I can fit 2 of them in my lap easily. And if D'Artagnan would come closer, I could scoop her up like a little baby, and we could have 3 of them up here. No room for big old Porthos, but he'll have more fun tearing my feet to shreds, I'm sure. Where you going, D'Artagnan? He's coming around. We're slowly teaching Porthos to acquiesce to being held like a baby. We're getting there. Let's get these babies some food. We are almost back. We are just heating up our second dinner. Whenever I can, I try to have 2 smaller dinners than 1 big dinner. A little bit of a break in between them. I feel like I'm able to get more food and better macros when I do that. That should be it now.
Feature that wasn't cut but was heavily scaled down was the Nemesis mode that shipped with the Xbox version, I think contractually. In the prototype, players could battle for control of Nemesis and actually control him, but this was cut. I believe Capcom wanted to save that concept for something else. But here's the biggest kicker of them all, and that was the length of the story campaign, or more specifically, the lack of length, a subject I'm very familiar with. On a very casual playthrough, most players could beat the single player mode in around 6 hours, 4 if they really rushed. That wasn't Slant 6's original plan though, as they initially were going to create 2 distinct story campaigns so you could see the scenario play out between both the Umbrella Forces and the Spec Ops / Echo 6 team. Players would have been able to choose which one to start with, and completing a mission would unlock the next in the other campaign, along with a whole other tier of bonus missions on top of that. But much like a lot of the stuff we've just covered, it came down to a matter of unrealized potential clashing with an unrealistic timeline, and sadly it was Slant 6 that would be the ultimate casualty of that battle. Slant 6 and Capcom would continually go back and forth on certain elements up until launch, which included the aforementioned issues regarding the game's story. It was Capcom's idea to de-canonize the game, once the whole Kill Leon aspect was added in, which was more of a marketing ploy than anything else. The anonymous staffer also outlined the process Capcom took for the story and dialogue before it was integrated into the game. They were very hands-on. For example, I mentioned the deadline with the script. Once they received it, they took it in-house, reworked it, and then delivered it back. We were only allowed to make a few improvements. I remember some Western press criticizing Slant for the story, not knowing that it was ultimately written in-house. With all these issues, you should then not be too surprised that a familiar creature, one even more deadly than a hunter or as devastating as a tyrant, would eventually enter the fray. And that was, of course, the ferocious and hope-crushing Crunch Monster. My source stated that in the first 6 months of 2011, they only got 9 days off, spending many weekends in the office along with several other core team members. Unfortunately, all that hard work didn't really pay off in the very end. When it launched in March of 2012, it was to a fairly negative critical response. Many found the main story campaign repetitive and lacking excitement, while consistent issues with bugs and online matchmaking being particular sticking points. A lot of these were eventually improved with patches, but some of you may recall here that addressing bugs and oversights like these took a lot longer back then than they do today, so it wasn't until June for them to finally be ironed out. Commercially though, Reorg did quite well the world over, which I guess is a testament to the game's more mainstream appeal, as it became the second best-selling game in North America that month, below only to the mighty Mass Effect 3. My source said they were directly told the game had cleared over 2 million copies in its first few weeks on sale, whereupon Slant 6 was also apparently told that a follow-up game would be on the table if they hit those sales targets. Somewhat predictably, this didn't exactly come to pass. We pitched several ideas. One of them was actually being moved forward, but I guess that's still under NDA. Another idea was to create a hybrid action horror game, a cross between Resident Evil and Uncharted, with Wesker as the main protagonist. The story would explore his divergence from Umbrella as he begins to realize that his research is being used in ways that differ from his original vision, a personal war between him and Umbrella. Now, I know this may sound like heresy to a few of you RE hardcores out there, but personally, Uncharted, Wesker's Fortune, or like Wesker May Cry sounds like some bomb-ass shit. Unfortunately, though, we don't live in that timeline. The former staff member explained that despite Reorg's very strong sales, its less than ideal critical reception affected their relationships with other publishers, and it made pitching future projects quite difficult. So, after 3 mobile games that, I'm just going to be honest here, I've never heard of, Slant 6 were essentially forced to close their doors in 2013, despite Reorg's commercial success. To this day, Capcom has attempted several times to try and offer some type of multiplayer-heavy online Resident Evil shooter thing. And at this point, I'm starting to think this ambition has just been thwarted again and again by like a bio curse or something. And it just sucks that a passionate studio was taken down along with it. As for the former Slant 6 staffer, well, they don't view the experience completely negatively, saying that despite Capcom taking the game in a direction that the team didn't fully agree with, there were still rewarding moments. For instance, streaming up the narrative of how the dead soldiers and tyrants you encounter in Resident Evil 3 meant their fate was incredibly satisfying. Orc provided the backstory for those events, filling in gaps that fans had long wondered about. It remains to be seen if Capcom will ever revisit this sort of premise, but you never know. One day, they're just gonna put more RE characters into Dead by Daylight. Who am I kidding? A big thanks goes out to the former staff member who was so forthcoming for today's episode. And if you out there know of any other biohazardous befuddlements in the video game or movie industries, do let me know in the comments below, or take an elevator into the secret laboratory that is my social media. See you next time, and thanks for watching.
Good one, Matt. Another banger from Matt McMuscles. There's some classic Resident Evil music in there as well. That's crazy. A little boy diversion.
He's just like
sounds
the
fun right
most
about
like
now.
Reddit dungeon troll looking guy in the world. He has a neck beard. You're that rich.
Imagine knowing that this guy lops as a 3-year-old on Twitter.
So what we're doing today, with your help, is doing a tier list of Elon Musk's best tweets. Now, I want to start with my own personal favorite.
Yep. Wait, do we have to search him on Twitter, which is the problem?
No, I'll search it here. Haven't had sex in ages. Sigh.
You
Elon.
revealed what it is.
No, it's okay.
I hope that Photoshop copy is pirated. It isn't.
No way.
Isn't. We tried for a while getting away.
When we first started, before we were making any money.
Wait, has he deleted this tweet?
No, it's still here.
It's still up.
Wait. No.
So this is
Rental.
a brilliant tweet. And there's even better things about it, but I'm too scared to scroll to find it because obviously there's going to be porn bot and then we'll get
people saying
taken off.
don't scroll.
Haven't had sex in ages. Is so funny because it's like true, I think. Like surely, like who would want to have sex with him? Also, like the way he has sex with people, he pays his employees to be surrogates to impregnate them. Do you hear that?
Look that up. This dude does not fuck. The thing is, you say that, but it is sad that if you have enough money, I think you can fuck.
I'm one of his direct reports at SpaceX to have his babies.
Well,
so you're already their boss. They're scared that you're going to fire them. You have all this power.
You're
over
also
them.
one of the
And you
most
say,
powerful people
hey,
in
just
the world.
spitball and just throwing it out there. How about I pay you
I'm
to...
just workshopping something here.
How about I pay you to have sex and also bring an entire child to term for 9 months?
What do you think of that?
What do you think? Don't worry about
just...
upsetting me. It's not a big deal. I don't care about it that much. I know I'm always tweeting about underpopulation and how we need to have more babies, but just keep that out of your mind for a second. And don't think about how I control your job and you'll be homeless and like if you say no.
Thank you for the sub. Shall do, Steven.
It's like the most unequal power dynamic.
Oh, it's crazy.
And he does. I mean, we're just talking about his tweets here, though. But he had amazing texts with this one woman as well at his work.
Wait, son, no, that is not transition. That is not true. Elon Musk uses IVF so he can only have male children, which is why he was so mad when his daughter transitioned. That is true.
Also, probably because he can't have sex.
I mean, I don't actually know about his children. Does he?
They
not
say they were conceived by IVF, and that's how he had triplet boys.
Why would you do that to your wife? Why would you stuff 3 fucking boys in her at once?
Because he doesn't give a shit about any of these people.
No.
It was the best thing. The best fucking own of Elon Musk was when he went to Turkey. And Erdogan's there. He's having a meeting with Erdogan. It's like a big deal. And one of the first things Erdogan says, he's looking at me, he's like...
Someone said boys.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
3 of them.
3 boys.
Erdogan, the fucking leader of Turkey, is just like, where's your family?
Erdogan the supermarket?
Erdogan is his name. Erdogan.
Okay.
Edrigan.
He's like, where's your family?
Erdogan.
And he's like making fun of him for ditching his wife and kids to be here. And it's really funny. It's like the perfect encapsulation of the difference between these like weird Western people who laugh as like traditional conservatives and he cares about the family while he's like a complete deadbeat dad. Doesn't give a shit about any of his family. It's just a cultural thing. He wants to project this image and he actually doesn't care about it. Where you've got like the kind of traditional conservative in Turkey who's like being a family man is like not even a political consideration. It's just what's done. And like there are issues with that. Obviously, there's issues with his worldview.
You have to hand
it's like
it to
miles
him for
ahead
that.
of these Western conservatives because he's not doing it for clout. He's literally just like, I am a dad. This is my role. This is important. Yeah.
There's a way Russians speak about it as well. That his daughter was dead to him. That's crazy. So it might not be that it's like, I mean, it's probably not a coincidence if it was all his children are boys. Doesn't he have a fuck ton of children?
Yeah, he has heaps. He has so many kids.
Well,
how many kids does he have? Asked where his wife Grimes was. That's so funny. Where is Grimes? I like the song.
Her music. I think 12.
Fucking disgusting.
I mean, at least he's like practicing what he preaches about overpopulation. He's like, I gotta make more kids, more Elons,
more white kids.
Great.
What would his kids sound like?
Well, they wouldn't have the South African accent or whatever. I don't even know what his accent is. Anyway, back to this. Now, this is